I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Don Le Batard.
My dad's in the baby business already.
Yeah, well,
my dad at one time had the number one selling baby seat, carriage, stroller, all of it at one time.
Stugotz.
Didn't you tell me one time that your dad really missed out on an opportunity to invest in air?
Yes, in air. My dad also missed out on an opportunity to invest in the hacky sack. That's the one that haunts him.
This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $620. Evan Wright going to join us in just a second here to tell us how to not hire a hitman. He'll join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Here's your SportsCenter update. Jay Bruce has reached agreement on a 3-year, $39 million contract with the New York Mets. UCF fans bought a billboard ad in Tuscaloosa congratulating the Crimson Tide for winning the national championship and asking if they would like to play their team in a home-and-home series. UCF needs to let this go already, man. I'm serious. It's enough. I mean, you didn't win the national championship. Move on, man.
I'm going to go on the Orlando radio station today and set fire to that university.
Good for you. Proud of you. And finally, O.J. Simpson emphatically denied the long-standing Hollywood rumor that he may be Khloe Kardashian's biological father to a TMZ camera person yesterday. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
You want to read that last one again?
And finally, O.J. Simpson emphatically denied the long-standing Hollywood rumor that he may be Khloe Kardashian's biological father to a TMZ camera person yesterday.
I mean, TMZ camera person is just somebody wandering around the airport with a camera, right? Okay, fair enough. Evan Wright, we're not passing that off as a journalistic source, are we?
That is 2018 right there.
Evan Wright, here's the story. I need to explain something here. We are not being provocative simply to provoke here. We're not condoning hitmen or anything like that. But yesterday we stumbled upon a story. A 68-year-old doctor from New Jersey was arrested for trying to hire a hitman to cover up his wife's knowledge of his drug ring that he was running with a pagan motorcycle gang. All of those details got our attention, and we were just like, well, how does one even go about hiring a hitman? Like, what's the first call you make?
How could those details not get someone's attention?
Right. So Evan Wright has written books, How to Get Away with Murder in America and American Desperado. They're available now. And I think the way to approach this, because I don't know how to do this, is to ask him what are the things that people often do wrong when trying to hire hitmen. So, Evan, thank you for being on with us. What are the things that people do wrong?
Hey, thanks for having me. And by the way, I'm not Khloe Kardashian's father either. I just wanted to set the record straight.
Thank you for doing that. We appreciate that.
Yeah, well, actually, Dr. Kaufman, the alleged man who allegedly hired a hitman, did some things right and some things wrong. So I'll just say that generally speaking, I did this book on John Roberts, who was a big-time cocaine smuggler and professional criminal in American Desperado. And what John always complained about, even at his level of professionalism, was finding competent, qualified hitmen, just the outside guy who could come in and whack somebody. And they were notorious for not showing up or taking the money.
Wait a minute. They're what? No, wait a minute. Whoa. They're notorious for what? Not showing up?
Yeah.
Stugotz of hitmen.
What do you mean?
Well, if you think about it, there's no sort of professional licensing system.
Yes, you can think about it that way. That would make sense.
Yelp.
Right. Yeah.
No one's an official hitman. Right.
There's no government overseeing it. Yeah, we get all that.
Yeah. So that's one of the problems. And, so I really put a lot of thought into this issue myself.
Do you think hitmen should have government regulators? Like,
I think there's a world where that could be.
What world is that?
What are you talking
No,
about?
I think there is a world. I'm with you.
What the Purge movie? Like, what are you guys talking about?
Well, the other book I wrote, How to Get Away with Murder in America, profiles an alleged hitman who worked for the mafia and then for the CIA. And I think this guy's at a very high standard. But the point is where people go wrong. See, the reason we always hear about these stories or often hear about somebody trying to hire a killer to kill their spouse, we hear about them because these usually go wrong.
All right, so help me out here. Yeah, but Evan, help me out.
I don't think he was done with his point, was he?
There was a long pause there.
I didn't think he was done. Were you done with your point, Evan?
It was a golf-sized pause.
No, I was thinking about the various possibilities of hitmen.
Oh.
So they go wrong because
you admit it was long, though. Right?
Will you just quit?
Hitmen, no, this is an important point for a lot of your listeners. Most hitmen that people hire are frequently snitches, or they're sent in by the FBI or the police undercover, and they're trying to entrap people. And this is why a lot of these schemes unravel. Now, Dr. Kaufman, who allegedly hired a hitman, actually did things right, because if you read the story, he allegedly had his wife murdered 5 years ago and continued to live as a free man and engage in what other, his criminal activities for 5 years after the killing. And that's 5 years in the criminal world. It's like dog years. That's like a whole lifetime, 5 years to a criminal on the streets or wherever they are. So he did a very successful job. And you have to ask, why was Dr. Kaufman relatively successful, whereas most people who want to hire a hitman to kill a spouse, they either never even get the killing done when they go to prison right away. And this is the key to success in hiring a hitman. It helps if you have an ongoing criminal enterprise already in operation.
Okay, that's
like
good.
Dr. Kaufman did.
Right.
And then the next thing is, if your operation is with a motorcycle club like the Pagans or another organization that's allegedly criminal, that they're in it with you.
Right.
And when there's a threat to your organization that a spouse poses, they have a shared interest in taking out the threat. And that's really the best way to go. And, John Roberts, the criminal whose life I wrote about, always said, when you're doing crime, make it as big as possible. Do as many as possible because you have many more resources at your fingertips as a major criminal than a minor one. So
that's great advice.
I think Kaufman really was doing a lot of things right, and relative to other people in the same situation. But I wanted to point out one other thing to your listeners. There's a fundamental error that people make who are married. They watch all the TV shows where they see that if you're married, your spouse can't testify against you, and that's generally can be violated by prosecutors. It actually is not generally true. They can get your spouse to testify against you. But people believing they can't tell their spouses all their, secrets of what they're doing, and then, when things go wrong, in this case,
Evan, if I may interrupt you real quick, just because I have some questions here specific to some things. How to Get Away with Murder in America and American Desperado are available now. These are his books. Evan Wright is with us on ESPN Radio. One question I have for you is receipts, per diem. How does a hitman get his or her expenses covered?
Well, and a smart hitman gets the expenses up front. There's just no way around that.
Right.
They're
builds it into the price
for the money up front.
Yeah.
Okay, builds it into the original estimate. And here's another thing, Evan, and I don't doubt that you are a foremost authority on this, but again, the advice on how to get a hitman is go to a motorcycle gang. I could have figured that one out myself. Can you guys give me an easier way to do this? Like, is there Hypothetically.
I'm with Dan. Like, Evan, I just wanted, like, if I decided today I wanted to walk out of the studio and for whatever reason I wanted a hitman, what would be the three steps?
Because yesterday, you don't, and please don't tell us go to the mafia.
Right, because we're not doing that.
I really, honestly, my advice is don't do it.
Okay, good advice.
It's very hard to walk out. In the 80s, you know, there was a great way to do it. Right. There was Soldier of Fortune magazine, and you could buy one at like a 7-Eleven, and it had ads in the back.
What?
Hitman.
What? That was in the 80s? Yeah. That's something we did in the 80s? I could get a hitman in the back of a magazine?
Yeah. And
what?
It was a much better time for this because...
It's the 1980s?
It could be a cash transaction, so nobody knew you bought the magazine, and you could, send away to the guy's P.O. box or whatever.
Wait a minute. Guillermo, put it on the poll. Were you aware that you could get a hitman through a P.O. box in the 80s or from a magazine in the 80s? What? Like, why did that dry up?
What else was in Soldier of Fortune magazine?
Right.
Oh, you could hire armies, but the point is you can't do that anymore because everything is traceable. Every phone call, every place you go. So you, as a civilian, can't go out there.
Evan,
and just find somebody.
Evan, you are saying on ESPN Radio right now that somewhere in 1980, I could have gone and picked up a magazine, and if I had cash, the next thing that would have happened is I would have had an army.
Yeah. I'm not saying it would be a top quality army.
Right. Just whatever army shows up, if any army shows up.
They would be magazine subscribers.
An army of magazine subscribers. All right, Evan.
You would have a bunch of guys who wanted to be an army who would show up, and that's better than nothing.
That's
yeah, you're right.
When you're going to attack Japan, you'll take what you can get.
All right, Evan. Thank you for being on with us. We appreciate it, sir. Excellent work.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. I don't know where to begin with that. I am shocked.
That's a lot to process.
Can that be true? Is it possible that what he's saying is true? That in the mid-1980s, you could have gotten a hitman through a magazine?
I have confirmation here.
That can't be true. We find out if it's true, and if I, stop lying about what that story was in the cocaine-soaked coach. I promised you I was going to tell you about that about 45 minutes ago, and I haven't gotten to it yet. So cocaine-soaked dolphin coach has some comments. Maybe we'll get to those next.
Don Le Batard.
I don't know anything.
Stugotz.
I don't remember what I was going to talk about. So in those instances, what I have is a default that just makes fun of Stugotz.
You're welcome.
This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
So what do you guys make of Bruce Arians saying of Nick Saban? And he's backed off the comments, but he said that the Giants job would seem to feel better than all the other jobs. What would you guys do? I want to put this in everybody's lap. Everybody's lap.
Okay.
You are Nick Saban. You have all the advantages in your sport. You can pay coaches whatever you want to. You can have 50 coaches on your staff. You can get the facilities you want. You get the recruits you want. Now you're going to start getting the quarterbacks. Really, this can be a unprecedented 20-year run. Or 20 more years.
Oh, yeah.
20 more years with him atop college football with all of the advantages.
Mm-hmm.
No salary cap, all of the advantages. Do you stay doing that job they pay for your house, they buy you $100 million or whatever they're paying him, and he's in Alabama, he's the highest paid coach in college football? Or do you go to the New York Giants and test yourself at the level where your ego is most going to be tested?
I stay at Alabama. I mean, I understand he came to Miami and maybe he needs to scratch that itch. Hey, I never did it in the NFL at the highest level, but he is still considered the greatest, maybe the greatest coach in the history of sports.
But what is the itch, though? Hold on a second, because this is not a small thing. Lou Holtz was considered a great coach, then went to the pros and became a clown.
Right.
Like, this is not a small... Bear Bryant doesn't go to the pros and then get exposed.
No, so I think if he goes back again and fails again, I think he does more harm to his legacy, and I don't think he's going to be very good. Look at that team. Then you have to consider the team. It's Eli Manning.
No, but what he thinks he can do with that team is, or any team. Just right. Let's not make it the Giants. Just make it the idea of the pros calling.
I think it's very hard if you're Nick Saban and your mentor is Bill Belichick, and you talk to that guy all the time, and you hear yourself being referred to as the greatest right? Because now we're having that conversation where Nick Saban is not just the greatest in college football. He is one of the greatest across football. Nick Saban has to feel like a fraud when he hears that. Because he's talking to the guy who actually is the greatest on the phone all the time.
Nick Saban has to feel minor league compared to what Bill Belichick is.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, one of the things that was crazy about this Giants story, I was reading just the history between the New York Giants and Nick Saban. Apparently, before Ben McAdoo got the job, there was this thing that happened where Tom Arnold reported that
the comedian on
actor,
Best Damn Sports Show,
Tom Arnold,
Roseanne Barr's former husband,
also a Twitter follower of mine. Shout out to Tom Arnold. Tom Arnold reported that Bob Arum.
That was unnecessary.
I mean, it's just true.
But it was unnecessary.
But I think he's following me too, so it's not that impressive.
But it was. I think he's following all of us.
Yeah, I'm going to check right now. Hold on.
But Tom Arnold following you is not something that you should be boasting
Well, I've talked to Tom Arnold on Twitter, so I just want to give him a shout out in case he's listening. Anyhow,
Guillermo, put it on the poll. Was Pablo referencing Tom Arnold because he wanted you to know that Tom Arnold follows him, or because he was offering context to his story? Go ahead.
If I may proceed. Tom Arnold calls some reporter and is like, hey, Bob Arum, boxing promoter Bob Arum, who said, yesterday I lied, today I'm telling the truth, that guy, called the New York Giants co-owner Steve Tisch on behalf of Nick Saban to angle for the job that Ben McAdoo got. Apparently, according to Tom Arnold's sources.
Well, that's how it happens.
$10 million.
But that's how that stuff happens, where the coach can deny, hey, me and my agent haven't contacted anybody. Like, that's exactly how that stuff happens.
But my point, and why I was buttering up Tom Arnold, is that if you look at the difference in image between Nick Saban, Zeus of college football, Bear Bryant in Alabama, versus Nick Saban in the NFL, who was getting run out of Miami and also relying on some combination of Tom Arnold and Bob Arum to get him in with the Giants? Like, what a huge hit to your ego. Here you're Zeus. Here you are a jester relying upon these people to get you in with an NFL team.
That's a funny, people, Bob Arum and Tom Arnold.
Like, that's the army that Nick Saban enlisted for that task.
Yeah, but I think Dan is right. That's the excuse you could fall on where, hey, what is Tom Arnold? Get out of here. I'm not interested in this job. It's Tom Arnold and crazy Bob Arum.
I could have found a better army in a magazine in the 80s than the one Nick Saban assembled to go get him that Giants job.
Don't the college coaches get more credit, though? Like, there's debate with the Patriots. Is it Belichick? Is it Brady? There's no debating Alabama.
No, but what do you think? If we ask the audience, who's a better coach, Nick Saban or Bill Belichick? Don't you think the answer is going to be pretty dramatically Belichick?
No.
You don't?
No. Not dramatically. I think Belichick probably better than 50%, but I think it's close.
Schematically, I think most would say Belichick's the better coach because he's doing it against professionals. But what's a harder job to do when you include recruiting? And,
no. Nick Saban's got the easiest job in college football. Now.
Well, now he does. But he made that for himself.
Now. Like, you could talk about the pressure and stuff, but I'm talking about the doing of the work. Nick Saban could run. I'm not even kidding you. If he wanted to, he's not the temperament. Nick Saban could be running that whole thing from his home and never leave it. And it would be wildly successful. Because of all of the advantages he has. He'll just flood the market. He'll make phone calls. He'll Skype. He'll FaceTime in his underwear from that lagoon in the back of his house.
He doesn't know how to do any of those
He doesn't know how to do any of what I'm talking about, including relax. But if Nick Saban now wanted to do that job as in an advisory role, he could be paid all the same money.
Probably. But this is interesting what you guys said. So Coach K feels minor league to Greg Popovich. He does, Coach K?
If you're talking about who is the best at something, I have to imagine that the people who don't coach professionals feel some inferiority to the ones that do.
I think you're being way too flippant about how hard Nick Saban's job is. He's not the number one recruiting class. He's got all these SEC schools willing to spend the exact same amount of money trying to do what he's doing. They're all gunning for him. And now you're saying something like, well, now he's always got to get the quarterbacks, as if he wasn't trying for the last decade and a half to get all the quarterbacks. I have
no proof that Nick Saban knows how to evaluate quarterbacks. I've got no proof of that. You guys are telling me he might be better than Belichick, and I've got no proof that Nick Saban knows how to find and develop a quarterback.
He did recruit recruit. I think he recruited Jamarcus Russell, who went number 1 overall in the draft, and he just never actually coached him the way that
he knows how to win without a quarterback. That's for sure.
That he does.
Yeah,
that
that's
he does.
Pretty good coaching, right there.
But that's why he's always trying to get the resources. Though it's hard to stay on top.
Yep.
Kirby Smart's trying to do the exact same thing.
But let Belichick win without a quarterback. Then I'll be impressed. How's that sound?
Hold on a second. Hold on. Yes, everyone's trying to do all the same things Nick Saban is. And Nick Saban has, in every department, the advantage over everyone who's trying to do the same thing that he is.
But it's also the case that saying, like, a college coach or their program is coach-centric, it's kind of like saying that Jeopardy is host-centric. Like, they're the only guy who's there every year, every show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the entire nature of college sports is, it's Wooderson from, what's the movie?
I don't know.
McConaughey, what's the movie?
Oh, my God.
What's the movie? What's the movie?
Where he's Wooderson, and he's doing, oh my God.
I got to be honest, Pablo.
We're all having this brain fart?
No, it's not we're all having this brain fart. This is what's happening. We'll go to break on this. I don't know what you're talking about. Stugotz wasn't listening, and the entire shipping container has no idea what we're talking about.
Dazed and confused.
They weren't listening to anything that was said there. Nothing.
They stay the
there
same
wasn't
age.
A person
you get younger. What's the
we weren't listening because we were too busy trying to improve the show and really connect with middle America by making an analogy that everyone can get behind. It's like my Toyota Camry. I can drive to work every day, and it's super dependable for me. But if I don't have maintenance and do my standard upkeep with that, someone's going to catch me, and this thing's going to break down.
They keep getting older, and I stay the same age.
Yes, that's Nick Saban.
Yes. That is Straight Talk. It is brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Nationwide coverage. I'm not even certain I just said it right.
You did it. You said the opposite.
I did.
Don Le Batard.
Do you refer to the yellow sauce at a hibachi restaurant as yum yum sauce? 57% of the audience said no.
Stugotz.
Do you go ginger, 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 yum yum, yum yum, yum yum, yum yum, yum yum, or yum yum, yum yum, yum yum, yum yum? 38% of the audience said yum yum, yum yum, yum yum. So they get 3 yum yum sauces. They ditch the ginger, get 2 yum yums with an additional yum yum. Second place was ginger yum yum. That Chris said earlier, no one goes ginger ginger. 18% of the audience goes ginger ginger. And 18% of the audience also goes yum 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 yum. About that.
This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
That documentary, Wiener, was really good.
We watched it together.
Was it?
That we did.
Was it long?
Not really. It went by very quickly. And I don't even know how to explain this to people. Watching him was deeply uncomfortable because he had such a craven need for attention, that there were scenes in the movie, and I don't know how they got this made this intimately, where his wife is standing right next to him, sort of disgusted by him in a way that is not a healthy relationship. Like, she didn't want those cameras in their home, and he wanted cameras in their home.
But there is also that scene in the movie, which people should go watch, where he is defending himself on television doing one of these remote hits that anybody who does TV does. And it's him in a dark room screaming into the camera lens. And in the context of the movie, you begin to appreciate how this, too, is a symptom of madness. And given that we all do that, you only begin to realize how absurd your life is.
All right, well, thanks to you two. I don't have to go watch it now.
I think you'd like it.
I'm not watching.
I think you'd recognize some
really
small pieces of yourself in not any of the.
Are you kidding?
Wait a minute.
Same last name.
No, wait a minute.
That's
hold on. It's only.
He's my dad.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Don't get offended by that. I understand why on the front end comparing you to Anthony Weiner, felon.
Don't be offended by that.
No, hold on.
How am I supposed to feel? Please tell
good
me.
in your day before all the bad stuff.
I mean, the man's in prison.
No, let me explain. If I can get to the end of the thought, it will be less offensive.
All right.
Just your need for the TV cameras to hear your opinion. Just that part.
Yeah, maybe I should watch it.
The other stuff you're clean on. We're okay.
All right.
We're good. Have we gotten to the bottom of whether we could have hired an army in the 80s through a magazine? Because now...
Yes, we have, and you could have.
Will you guys feel comfortable with that as fact now? We are saying as a fact that in the 80s you could have gotten a hitman or an army through a magazine.
Soldier of Fortune magazine did exist. There were a series of lawsuits, perhaps unsurprisingly, about the concept in question, but seemingly people did pull it off.
When you Google it, and Pablo's right, it was, I don't even remember the magazine growing up, but there was a lot of controversy around the magazine and its existence. There was a lot of lawsuits.
I've got a story to tell you. Stugotz's feelings are hurt about something. It's not because I just compared him to Anthony Weiner. He was legitimately hurt during the break.
Yep.
But I simply want to ask you guys this question because the Seattle Seahawks fired their offensive coordinator yesterday. And do you guys think, do any of you have this feeling when watching the Seattle offense? Russell Wilson is always just running for his life scared. That can't be how that should look. Like, that's not a plan. That's not coaching. That's not offensive scheming. The Seattle Seahawks never look the way they're supposed to look.
It should be something when Wilson does that when a play breaks down. It should not be the entire offense. Have Russell run around like everyone's chasing you.
That's my question.
Figure it out.
My question is this. Has the Seattle offense for 7 years been just Russell Wilson scared for his life? Has that been the blueprint?
I think so.
But I don't think there's ever a play where it's like, all right, offensive line, look like you're terrible. Like, that's not a strategy that anybody has intentionally.
But the frustration with Bevel is the best thing they got going, and the only thing that works is Russell Wilson running around terrified because you cannot run the ball. And it takes Bevel 3.5 quarters to figure it out.
Yes. They are the worst in the league in terms of 3 and outs in the first quarter.
Well, no, but how about that? The other point you make is a tremendous one, which is there are very few teams in the league you fear more coming back from behind than when all of a sudden Russell Wilson is at maximum. I'm most scared we're going to lose.
I think that's when he's at his best. I don't know. Like, I can't even imagine Russell just dropping back traditionally and throwing a pass.
Can you picture Russell Wilson in the Patriots offense?
Like the statuesque quarterback? Tom Brady? Just three-step drop.
No. Let me do it another way. Can you picture Russell Wilson playing with a protected pocket? Because I can't picture it.
No.
I don't feel like I've ever seen it.
No.
We have seen it. There's some recency bias here going on because when they won a Super Bowl, he was protected, and then they made that trade where they traded their center, and that was just the beginning of their line sort of falling apart. There was a retirement. They lost Okung, I believe.
So I'm remembering this wrong? Even when they were winning the Super Bowl, the offense wasn't Russell Wilson just runs around like a crazy person?
Well, it was a lot of Marshawn.
Not in the early, in the early days, it was, we have the best defense in the world, ball control, and when Russell Wilson needs to make a play, he'll make it, but we're not going to make that the game. And now that's what they're best at. But
I feel like their solution in the Super Bowl year was always at the end, Russell, go make us a play. That their offense was always that, and then they just expanded it. Like, Bevel might not have been in the facility for the last 7 years. Never showed up for work, and they just covered for him. Because that was not a strategic plan that they've had on offense for the last 7 years. It can't be.
I think his biggest fault is that he hasn't realized that should have just been the plan, and because you don't have the parts to make anything else work, and he tries to make everything else work, and that might be an edict from, Russell Wilson to keep him alive, or Pete Carroll, hey, we got to try this, because historically Pete Carroll's about, possessing the ball and trusting your defense.
But I like the opposite edict, which is what Dan was implying, whether he realized it or not, which is that we need to make Russell Wilson feel really desperate and afraid to get the best version
at all times.
Running for his life.
At all times. The best Russell Wilson, I'm telling you, what we need to do is like
fear factor.
No, we need somebody breathing fire behind him. Like, are you not down for that?
Wild animals.
The occasional bear trap somewhere on the field that he's got to avoid. Like that.
Left tackle, fall down.
I feel like Russell Wilson at maximum survival is the strongest human instinct. Is the best athlete in the world. I feel like I can argue that if I just make everything around him total death situations, that he'll throw for 500 yards and there might not be an incompletion and he'll never get tackled.
Right. When an animal approaches a normal human, we soil ourselves in self-defense. When Russell Wilson gets attacked by an animal, he becomes an MVP.
MVP of the league. You've heard of these? Is it true story that a parent can lift an entire car with the adrenaline of if a child is in danger?
Yeah. Evolutionary biology.
I feel like we need to, at every point, put Russell Wilson in danger.
What the hell supports that?
Evolutionary biology, my man.
He deserved that. He deserved that.
11:41 a.m. is the first one I got, by the way. That's pretty good.
Another victory for Stugotz over the highfalutin Pablo.
Don Batard.
They're talking sports, going at it as hard as they can.
Stugotz.
They're talking sandwiches, going at it as hard as they can.
This is the Don Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
I do think there is an interesting conversation to be had about whether Nick Saban actually has to work hard next year. Not will he work hard. Does Nick Saban, if Nick Saban was interested in mailing in a year at the job where he just doesn't care very much, could he do it next year?
Yes. I mean, he's got the greatest quarterback in the history of college football returning for his sophomore season. So, yeah, he could.
He should be able to, but I also feel like his branding will never allow him to do that.
He won't do it. That's not the question.
No, not even if he's really slacking, he will never betray that he may secretly be slacking.
But could he put it on cruise control and still win a national championship next year?
Well,
yes.
I agree.
This is what, no, but I want to take this out to the furthest extremes conversationally. Let's say everything you know about Nick Saban somehow turns out to be wrong, that he has some sort of crisis of life, spiritual awakening, something that changes the football coach, joyless football coach that he's always been. And he decides, you know what really matters? Family and faith and looking at sunsets. But I want to keep the paycheck and the house. How can the administration help me do that? I'd like to keep this life that I have. I'd like to keep doing this job, but this actually happened to Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson found perspective staring into the coffin of his late mother. His sons were holding him up in the aisles, and he had all manner of regret about, I didn't tell him I loved him enough. I wasn't a good enough human being. I don't want to coach anymore. He goes and he tells the owner of the team, Wayne Huizenga. Wayne Huizenga says, listen, you could just coach home games if you want. You don't have to travel. If you want to be with your family, just coach home games. And Jimmy's like, I can't do the job that way. The job can't be done that way. And what I'm asking you guys is, can Nick Saban?
And not if he wants to continue sitting atop the sport. Are we going to act like he wasn't maximum trying and just barely made the Final Four and just barely won a championship at maximum effort?
Mike,
that's the easiest negative recruiting job in the world. Come over here to Georgia. I'll actually coach you.
Right. I mean, he can get away with it for a year. He cannot get away with it long.
I don't know. He can't even get away with it for a year if he wants to be a top.
Mike, all the guys returning next year are enough to win.
Hold on a second. Mike, I'm not interested in the argument of whether or not he would win the championship if he was mailing it in. What I'm interested in asking you and the audience is, what is the bare minimum amount of work that Nick Saban would have to do in that job for you to say, yeah, I think he could still win the championship doing the job, taking a 3-week vacation during the season, or whatever it is, like a normal life outside of a football coach.
This is going to sound ridiculous because it's one of the most important and time-consuming parts of his job. He just needs to keep recruiting. He needs to walk into kids' living rooms, talk to parents, and just assure them that he's going to be there. He don't do anything else.
He could come in at the end and close deals. What I'm asking you is, if he were so interested in such a thing, could Nick Saban change the way football coaches do business by being a legitimate CEO where he's just overseeing things and he says, you know what? I'm going to hire Saban. I'm going to be Pat Riley now. I'm going to still be here. I'm going to be overseeing everything that's happening here.
That's a good comparison. Is a Pat Riley type ever a football coach? A modern-day Pat Riley, who is not a micromanager, I presume.
No, he is a micromanager.
Okay, well, maybe that's a bad comparison then. Because I feel like the question is, can a coach be a macro manager?
Yeah, but Riley's still Danny's the president, so he's not coming down to coach on the sidelines.
I know, but what I'm asking you, if Nick Saban were interested, could he simply now work out something with Alabama? I want to be CEO and overseer of what we're doing here. But look, I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. I know Nick Saban's not built like this, but if he wanted to change the paradigm, could he?
I mean, if anyone could, it'd be Nick Saban. You would have to hire a really, really established, well thought of coach to kind of handle some of that stuff for you. Like some of the recruiting stuff. And then, I guess maybe you can pull it off.
I was talking.
You don't want to be the deal closer though, Dan. You don't want to come in last minute. You don't want to be perceived by parents as the guy who comes swoops in and closes the deal.
Look, we can keep pretending that this is about the kids if you want to pretend that the coaches are making it about the kids.
I'm not.
No, but I'm saying Nick Saban's swooping in to get your kid to pro football. He's not swooping in because you trust Nick Saban with the next 4 years of your son's education. Like, they're going to play football to be professionals.
Right.
And what I'm asking you is the idea of, is there such a thing as, I was talking with Pablo about this last night. It's not about working less. It's about less feeling like work.
Because, by the way, this is really a conversation about Dan. Dan is Nick Saban.
Oh, now it makes more sense.
Is it about me?
Oh, now we got it.
Because I couldn't make any sense of it on the football side. Yeah.
You guys don't understand what I'm asking you? What I'm saying is, once you've arrived...
We do now.
No, we were having this conversation. 2 weeks ago about how joyless Nick Saban and Belichick appear. And the idea, if you're not going to enjoy it now, when are you going to enjoy it? If it's not... So the idea of happiness, because all of these coaches seem like a misery... I think it's an interesting conversation point. John Gruden just returned from a cushy job to 18 hours a day in a dungeon.
He returned to $100 million.
Okay.
That's what he did.
But Saban's already making that.
I understand that.
We're not even 48 hours removed from Nick Saban telling Tom Rinaldi, quote, "This is the happiest I've ever been in my life."
Yep.
Does he seem like he's joyful to you generally?
He did that night.
Day to day? Yeah, but he did that night because he won the championship again without playing in a conference game.
You're right.
And they scored 0 points in the first half.
And they
had guys fighting on the sidelines. They had a guy, and they won the damn championship. Of course he's happy that night.
And he did say that through a frown. I mean, there's no question about it.
He did add after he said that, ever. Yeah. I've never been happier in my life.
Without smiling, he did it.
Ever.
Well, happiness is relative.
Yeah. So what are you trying to tell us here, Dan?
Thank you, Guillermo. Yes. No,
just tell me how you want me to answer the question.
Guillermo.
Just tell us how you want us to answer. Just tell us.
No, it's not how I want you to answer.
But what if Nick Saban is a masochist?
Is
to Guillermo's point. What if he perceives happiness in pain?
I think that's like Kornheiser. I think that the larger thing here that I want to talk about is the idea of, can you be balanced and be a football coach? Is it possible?
We're still going to talk about this?
No!